Lib Dem spokesperson Luke Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr Weston. A pleasure to serve under your chairship. I'd like to also thank the Honourable Member for Brigg and Immingham for bringing this very important debate and for the contributions of all who have spoken before me. I'd also like to declare an interest as the chair of the APPG on the future of aviation, in which we've done a lot of work on sustainable aviation fuel, and also that I've met with representatives from Exolum, IATA, LanzaJet and the Tank Storage Association in preparation for this debate. At times of great upheaval and change, it's tempting to look to political leaders, artists or other major cultural figures to get a sense of where the world is headed. It's certainly a very popular view amongst historians, but I think it misses something. It misses the often pivotal role of engineers. And I am indeed not just saying that because I am or was one myself. You don't have to subscribe to an entirely materialistic view of history to recognise that engineers, no matter who they are working for or where they work, are often at the vanguard of the kind of technological change that enables our wider political or social ambitions. It was true at the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. It was true when the white heat of technology exploded the middle class in the 50s, and it is true now, perhaps more than ever, as we embark on the mission of undoing the damage to our environment that those previous shifts have wrought. Securing our energy supply to withstand an ever more uncertain future and transforming our late industrial malaise into a green, prosperous, abundant economy through a truly just transition. Data from the oil and gas industry shows that it directly supports around 26,000 jobs across the UK and indirectly supports 95,000 more. These are largely through offshore drilling, rigging, catering and scaffolding, and onshore fabrication yards, anchor manufacturing, vessel maintenance and more. But there are also an estimated 84,000 more jobs for hospitality workers, taxi drivers that serve these industrial communities and are supported by them in turn. We have seen before what happens when we fail to support these jobs and the communities that they help keep alive through a major industrial shift. From the closure of the pits to the ongoing crisis of British Steel. So we must learn lessons from these past deindustrialisations to avoid similar damage to communities today. All policymakers should dedicate themselves to avoiding the traumatic manifestations of necessary or at the very least foreseeable moments. It is absolutely vital that any job losses in this sector are mitigated by reskilling and retraining with new green investment. Yet we are losing both our traditional refining, chemicals and existing biofuel production capability and homegrown expertise right now in 2025. Complexity, departmental misalignment and a lack of pragmatism in public policies holding back the existing and future fuels sector. These are things that the government has the power to solve, and hopefully today we can suggest and agree some constructive next steps. So, early this year, the Liberal Democrat colleagues and I recognised the importance of the government's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Bill. SAF will be one of the main enablers of aviation's transition from polluting liquid fossil fuels to a future of hydrogen, battery and hybrid zero-emission power plants. As part of that transition, SAF has a huge role to play in creating new green jobs and delivering on our energy security goals. Local production creates jobs, improves resilience, reduces import dependence and stabilises prices. But without efficient resource allocation and strategic investment, future refinery closures could create severe supply bottlenecks and undermine our energy independence. It is equal parts encouraging that there is consensus among the serious political parties in this country about the need for transition and energy security, but also concerning that from different ends of the spectrum, the Greens and Reform are either willfully ignorant or unwilling to accept that supporting the oil refining industry to transition is critical. The Greens seem willing to turn their back on any of the major technologies involved in the just transition of our fossil fuel infrastructure. They're locked into the pursuit of an ideological purity that sees these companies and producers solely as the problem and not part of the solution. And Reform's static, stagnant and staggering belief that net zero is either bound to hurt working people or just bad in and of itself only gives them the self-satisfied, smug smile of someone who thinks they know all the answers but couldn't be further from the truth. Absolutely.
So, I thank the honourable member for his speech. He talks about hurting working people. Does he not agree with me that the closure of these oil refineries hurts working people?
I thank the member for his intervention, and I completely agree, and that's why we're talking about a transition. And that may well kind of bring shivers to your spine talking about transitions. It is absolutely critical that we talk about this in a reasonable and sensible way and how we look forward to the future rather than to the past. Their approach is equally dogmatic and damaging as that of the Green Party is already being found wanting in practice in local government. There we go. For instance, we can only make the transition a reality if we grasp the opportunity to utilise our existing oil refining infrastructure to turn to the chemistry of the future, with a diverse set of feedstocks from a wide range of supply points. We should be working with industry on delivering this, but industry leaders tell me that there are critical steps that the government should be taking that are going ignored or unheard. Take bioethanol. At the start of 2025, the UK bioethanol sector provided 895 million litres of renewable fuel production capacity and thousands of direct and indirect jobs, as well as being a significant market for British agriculture and providing critical co-products such as CO2 for the NHS and the food and drink sector. As of December 2025, the industry has been halved following the US-UK trade deal. An immediate solution would be to transition this bioethanol to SAF, where the alcohol-to-jet technology being developed in the UK can convert it into jet fuel. However, under the SAF mandate rules, bioethanol readily produced in the UK, which is sustainable enough for a car engine, has been deemed not sustainable enough for a jet engine. Can I ask the Minister to consider the request from industry that they support the UK's bioethanol industry to continue operations and simultaneously support SAF production by allowing its use under the SAF mandate? The upcoming call for evidence on the role of crops under the UK SAF mandate should be released urgently, and a pragmatic approach should be taken. Similarly, opening hydrogen storage subsidies to include liquid fuel infrastructure would ensure that existing assets can play a role in the hydrogen economy. Hydrogen storage is critical, but hydrogen production and usage is critical too to our future renewable goals and to provide the supply of SAF that will be required to decarbonise aviation. To make compliant SAF in the UK, DfT rules state hydrogen must be green hydrogen, rightly, and cannot be supported by the Hydrogen Production Business Model, HPBM, a scheme established by DESNZ to get UK hydrogen production off the ground, and that alone is not controversial. However, there is no green hydrogen available in the UK which will not be supported by the HPBM, which means a portion of SAF using these renewable molecules will be uncompliant and essentially very expensive fossil jet fuel, despite it actually being green. So on this, can I convey to the Minister the ask from industry that DfT and DESNZ should be urgently working together to ensure interconnectivity with hydrogen policy and SAF policy so that SAF producers are not penalised for using domestic industry? A pragmatic approach... yes, absolutely.
Also recommend the delay or lifting of the HEFA cap. Would you agree with that approach being taken? It's the project and report on the future industrial options of Grangemouth.
Yeah, I thank him for his intervention. I know he has a lot of knowledge in this. I think that looking at all the options that maintain capability are absolutely critical, and I think that what might come out of this is an ask for the Minister or potentially the Aviation Minister to sit down with our APPG, where there's a lot of expertise, to talk about some of the ways that we can maintain both capability but also achieve our transition and net zero goals. A pragmatic approach could be to not apply rules to smaller users of hydrogen, for example, where hydrogen accounts for less than 5% of feedstock, while they take longer to consider the impacts for large-scale hydrogen users. Now turning to our wider ecosystem of logistics infrastructure. Pipelines, storage and distribution networks are essential for connecting supply and demand, especially as the market shifts towards sustainable fuels, and as we look to improve our energy security. Exolum, for example, who run a 2,000-kilometre onshore pipeline network that delivers 40 to 50% of the aviation fuel used for UK flights each year, is transforming its aviation fuel pipeline network to supply SAF. To unlock further investment in that infrastructure and ensure a just transition, industry is calling for long-term policy signals. Signals like extending and increasing renewable fuel mandates and targeted incentives like business rate relief and payment holidays for new infrastructure. Inclusive subsidy schemes for hydrogen storage again, and fast-tracking obligations for renewable liquid heating fuels. At present, most support for fuel infrastructure is directed towards large-scale production projects. Conversely, investment in storage and distribution infrastructure is increasingly undertaken at operators' own risk and often ahead of the immediate market need. This imbalance is amplified by a business rate system that can disincentivise new investments and high-end capital projects, including energy transition initiatives, especially when the investment is by overseas companies likely looking for more cost-effective placement of funding in countries with more generous and strategic policies. So on this, I ask the Minister how they can ensure the policy and investment frameworks can support storage and distribution infrastructure, thereby enabling the development of a future-ready energy system capable of responding to evolving market conditions and minimising supply chain risks. To sum up, the Liberal Democrats urge the Government to fully grasp the opportunities that our industrial capacity and workforce capability offers our country to lead the world in a transition to next-generation fuels and energy. Because it's in our blood, it's in our tradition as a country to grapple with these big technological questions. And so it should be up to us to show what real leadership on the just transition looks like. Not just because great feats of engineering are impressive in their own right, and they are, but because a whole generation of people and future generations whose lives and careers have been shaped by our oil refineries and wider energy sector are counting on that leadership. In recent years, the Conservatives abandoned it, and we urgently need to get it back and provide stability for the communities most affected. Homegrown, local renewable energy and fuels can be clean, cheap and popular, and they embed resilience. So the Government must work with industry, because striving for theoretical perfection rather than ambitious but deliverable policy risks choking the sector and neutering this revolution. Our engineers and industry stand ready to deliver, as they have done time and time again, the greener economy that we need and that communities up and down the country deserve. Thank you.